There are punishments meant to end a life. And then there are punishments designed to keep it going. He didn't beg for freedom. He didn't ask for mercy. He begged for death. But they refused. Because the goal wasn't to kill him. It was to keep him alive. Just enough to suffer. Day after day. Breath after breath. In a place where death would have been an escape. And escape was the one thing he would never be given. When he was first brought in, he still believed in limits. Every punishment had one. Every sentence had an end. That's how the world worked. But not here. The place they took him to was silent, controlled, and terrifyingly precise. Nothing was random. Every detail, the light, the space, even the silence, felt designed. At first, he resisted. He shouted, demanded answers, tried to understand what he had done to deserve this. No one responded. Instead, they watched. Closely, carefully, as if he wasn't a prisoner, but an experiment. Days passed. Or at least, what felt like days. Time didn't move normally here. There were no clocks. No windows to mark the sun. Just a constant state of existence. Food came rarely. Water came just enough. Every time his body began to weaken, they intervened. Not to help him, but to keep him going. Alive. That's when he began to understand. This wasn't a punishment meant to end him. It was designed to stretch suffering as far as possible. Every moment was controlled. Every breath allowed. And every second of pain. Intentional. His body started to break under the pressure. Exhaustion. Hunger. Pain. But every time he reached the edge, they pulled him back. Not out of mercy, but out of purpose. And slowly, a terrifying realization settled in. He wasn't here to die. He was here to be kept alive.
At first, he tried to fight it. Every instinct told him to resist, to hold on, to stay strong, to outlast whatever this was. But this place didn't work like the outside world. Here, survival wasn't victory. It was the punishment. His body was constantly pushed to its limits. Hunger clawed at him. Sleep was never complete. Pain never fully faded. And every time he felt himself slipping, every time darkness started to take over, they stepped in. A drop of water, a forced movement, a sudden interruption, just enough to pull him back, just enough to remind him he wasn't allowed to escape, not even through unconsciousness. That's when the begging started. At first, it was quiet, a whisper into the darkness, a desperate plea no one answered. Please, let me go. But as time dragged on, the whispers turned into cries, then screams, then something worse, silence. Because eventually he realized something terrifying. No one was listening, or worse, they were, and they simply didn't care. Time became meaningless. There were no days, no nights, no sense of before or after, only the present, only the suffering. His thoughts began to slow, his body moved less, and hope disappeared completely. Because in this place there was no goal, no end point, no final moment where it would all stop. There was only one truth. He wasn't surviving. He was being kept alive. At some point, the body stops being the problem. It's the mind that begins to break. At first, he tried to hold on to something real. Memories, voices, faces, anything that reminded him he once existed outside this place. But the longer he stayed, the harder it became. Details faded. Names slipped away. Voices became unclear. Even his own thoughts began to feel distant. And in that silence, something else took their place. He started hearing things. Soft whispers at first, then clearer. Footsteps in empty corridors, breathing that wasn't his own. He turned quickly, expecting someone, But there was never anyone there. The walls didn't move, the door never opened, yet the feeling remained. He wasn't alone. Or at least, his mind didn't let him feel alone. Sometimes he spoke back, argued with voices only he could hear, answered questions no one had asked. Other times, he just listened, as if waiting for something real to return. But it never did. Because isolation does something terrifying. It forces the mind to create its own reality. And slowly, that reality becomes stronger than the truth. He began to forget where he was, forget why he was there, forget who he even was. The line between memory and imagination disappeared, and in its place came something far worse than pain: emptiness. A state where nothing mattered, no fear, no hope, no resistance, just existence. Because by now, the prison didn't need to control him anymore. His mind was doing that on its own. There comes a point in every form of suffering when resistance ends, not because the pain is gone, but because there's nothing left to fight with. For him, that moment came quietly. No scream, no breakdown, just stillness. He stopped begging, stopped asking for death, stopped asking for anything at all. His body moved less each day. His thoughts slowed, then scattered. Even the voices faded, not because they were gone, but because he no longer had the strength to listen. He sat in the same position for hours, maybe days, eyes open, but empty. The kind of emptiness that isn't peaceful. It's hollow, like something inside has already disappeared. The system around him didn't change. The same routine continued. Minimal food, interrupted rest, constant control. But something had shifted. Before, they had to keep him alive. Now, he was doing it himself. Barely eating, barely moving, barely thinking, and yet still alive. Because that was the final stage. Not pain, not fear, but acceptance. A silent surrender to something that would never end. And in that moment, the truth became unavoidable. This punishment wasn't about breaking him anymore. That part was already done. Now, it was about keeping what remained from ever escaping. In the end, there was no dramatic finish, no final scream, no last moment of resistance, just continuation. He was still there, alive, breathing slowly, barely moving, but alive. And that was the most terrifying part of all, because everything else was gone. His memories had faded, his voice had disappeared, his identity erased. What remained wasn't a man anymore. It was something else, something that existed only because it was being allowed to exist. The door still opened from time to time. Food still came. Water still came. The system still functioned perfectly because it had achieved exactly what it was designed to do. Not to kill, but to remove everything that made life meaningful while forcing it to continue anyway. And when they finally looked at him, there was nothing left to understand. No anger, no fear, no relief, just empty eyes staring through everything. They hadn't saved him. They hadn't punished him. They had done something far worse. They had turned survival itself into suffering. And in that silent, endless existence, the final truth became clear. Death would have been mercy, but mercy was never part of the design.